Good morning and happy new year. I haven't said that in a minute, but I haven't seen any of you this year. So happy new year. Welcome to our first level up session of the year. Um, I'm thrilled to be back with you. We got a lot to cover today and over the next few months together. We'll give a few minutes for everyone to get access and jump into the Zoom and be ready to go. Couple things as you are getting settled and getting ready. You'll notice possibly that your little username has a long number at the beginning of it. A little technical issue that'll be resolved, and that's just fine. But feel free to go change your name if you want to get the big number off the front of it. It'll make it easier for me to see who is who. Thanks, Jess. She's on top of it. Already changed it. Amazing. And great to hear from you, Jess. I'm glad you're here. Yeah, so that's great. Let me go ahead and share my screen. We'll do a little icebreaker as we get started, as we normally do. Usually, as you know, I like to ask kind of a fun question. Today's a little more serious, though. I mean, unless you got something really fun you want to share. Hopefully, this is actually still fun, but less personal, more professional. That's really what I'm trying to get at. What's your biggest fundraising priority in this new year in 2025? Your answer could be as simple as donor retention. It could be as complicated as we're hiring this person and that person and building out a team to go do this, that, and the other thing. But jump in the chat and let us know, what's your biggest priority going into this year? And as you get some of your thoughts together and put them in there, just to kind of set the table for where we're going today. Jordan and I have spent a decent amount of time together looking at the results from the survey that many of you have filled out, which I believe is still open. Is that correct, Jordan?
That's right. So it is still open till the end of the month. So if you or any of your staff members involved in Level Up haven't taken it yet, everybody gets a unique link to their inbox. We sent you one email. We are going to send one more just as a reminder for those who haven't yet taken the survey. So thank you in advance.
Cool. That survey is really, really helpful. I mean, we Jordan and I spent some time last week going through some results together, and I had a bunch of questions and things of what should we change, what should we tweak, and how should we improve things. One of the things that came to mind for me as we're looking at some of the feedback is a few of you, not all, but a few of you said that as we're going through these sessions, it's helpful, it's all been good and beneficial, but it's not quite getting you to that digital fundraising goal that you had maybe last year or maybe going into a new year. And so I just want to open up the question, what's the biggest priority as you're heading into this year? Because if there's ways we can tweak and shape some of the content to go help you take some steps forward, I would love to do that. So I see a bunch of notes coming in. So from Brianna, I won't read your serial number here on the start of your name, but from Brianna, get early sponsorships. Okay, cool. Matt, establishing a solid recurring donor plan and executing it. Love it. Sarah's building deeper personal relationships with donors, sponsors, partners, etc. Morgan's finding a new donor base. I won't read every single person's out loud here, but thank you for sharing these. Well, I'll kind of comb through these because again, it might tweak and shape some of the content that we put together over the next few months. So take some time and make sure you drop your comment in here. I'll look back at these at the end of our session to make sure we have some notes on this to make sure that you're getting the most that you possibly can out of these sessions. I do see a lot of comments around retention, obviously recurring things about building relationships with current donors, which is ultimately what we're trying to do in any of this like digital fundraising world that we're creating together. We're really focused on how do we just build those relationships at scale using some digital tools and strategies. So thank you. Again, keep dropping your comments in there as you have them. Would love to know more of where you're going this year in 2025. A couple other housekeeping items related again to the survey. I've taken to heart some of the comments that came through. There were a lot of comments just about, man, we've covered a lot of material in a pretty short amount of time. And Jordan's laughing, like we know this, we're aware of it. We're aware of it the whole time because we had a goal, we had a deadline, we had Colorado Gives Day that we were working to, and then the end of the year. And there's a lot we were trying to cram into that space to make sure we can build a lot of those critical essentials to help you win on Colorado Gives Day. And now we're going into a new year where we can actually breathe a little bit more and take a little bit more time. That was, again, some of the feedback was might we like slow down a little bit, have a little bit more time to just sort of sit in the content, maybe do some working sessions, that sort of stuff. So as we've designed today's session, I've built in a couple of activities where we're going to do just that. We're going to certainly talk about theories and ideas and tactics and principles and data and all that good stuff. But then we're going to have a little bit of working time to go through some exercises to help us see what's the current state of being a new donor. What does it feel like to be a new donor? What can we then do to optimize that process? And even by the end of today, well, I'll show you where we're going. We're going to be able to actually go write an email. I'm going to give you some time to go work on that. We're talking about new donors and what do we do with them? And so, kind of goal number one for today is to understand how a new donor welcome series can impact some of your most critical metrics. So hopefully you have had a good influx of new donors either over Colorado Gives Day or the year-end season at large. And so we want to know, what do we do with those people? How do we onboard them in a meaningful way? Set up this great personal human relationship, as y'all are talking about in the chat, and use that as a means to actually drive towards better retention and ultimately greater impact for our organizations through increased revenue. Secondly, where we're going to go is that by the end of today's session, you should be in a spot where you are fully confident and capable of creating an effective welcome email for your new donor welcome series. We are not going to get through the entire framework of the series today. We did a webinar actually last year in January where we compressed a good chunk of this framework into about 45 minutes. We're going to spend an hour or so today working basically through the first 3 emails in this series, but with a specific focus on making sure you're able to craft this welcome email effectively. Next month, we'll spend some time on the remaining emails and some of kind of the other tech-related things to go implement a successful and effective new donor welcome series. But ultimately, your homework for today afterwards is to go write your new donor welcome email. It's kind of proof that you were here, you paid attention, you absorbed the material, and you're ready to go onboard those new donors well. So that's a picture of where we're going. And you actually need a little activity sheet, if you will, worksheet for today. It's nothing super complicated. It's just a very simple Google sheet with a few fill-in-the-blank questions and answers. You can go ahead and scan this QR code, and I'll leave it up on the screen for a moment. And then let me see if I can grab the actual URL, and I'll plug it into the Zoom chat so that you can go get a copy of this sheet. When you click through the link or you scan the, give me a moment, I'll hit send here. There you go, you can see it in the chat. When you click through the link or you scan the QR code, you'll see this copy document screen come up. That's so you can go make a direct copy of this worksheet into your own Google Drive. So if you're not logged into your Google account, you'll need to do that, but you can go make a copy of this. And then it's just a 2-tab Google Sheet. Step 1 says make a donation to your organization. It's got some questions. We'll look at step 2 in a little bit. But we're going to use this today through some of these kind of guided activities to help us, again, learn more about what that new donor feels when they are onboarded as a new donor. So we can discover some of the ways we can optimize that process. And then at the end, we're going to work on an outline for our welcome email. So you can see it in the chat. Make sure that you go grab that. We're not going to use it immediately. We'll use it for our first activity here in a few moments, but make sure that you grab that. All right, let's dive in. Let's talk about first, what is a new donor welcome series? We all probably have an idea of what this is, what it maybe should be or shouldn't be. And they might all be totally different definitions and ideas. And so I want to make sure that we're on the same page of what a new donor welcome series actually is and what constitutes an effective one. And where I like to start with these kind of questions is actually sort of the inverse. What's not a new donor welcome series? I've done a lot of training on things like donor retention and specifically how to onboard new donors to lead to better retention. And through those trainings, or sometimes we'll do an analysis of kind of mapping out the full donor experience for an organization and point out that you don't have a new donor welcome series. They might say, yes, we do. In fact, we do. We send a thank you email. We have a new donor welcome series. And I would challenge you that just simply having a thank you email is not the same as having an effective new donor welcome series. We should definitely have a thank you email. Hopefully all of you do have a thank you email. You have the tools certainly to go send one through Colorado Gives and probably others as well. But just sending a thank you is not enough. I've heard people say this when we get to the end of some type of analysis and we recommend you need a new donor welcome series. Well, we send a thank you and then they'll get our monthly newsletter. And that's a good thing. Again, sending a thank you is a good thing. Dropping someone into a ongoing sort of cultivation stream via a newsletter is a good thing. But again, it might not be enough. There's not really a process to really onboard someone, welcome them into a meaningful community of generous donors. They're just dropped into a newsletter, which sometimes can be written in a very personal way, but most of the time is pretty impersonal and fairly passive in terms of the information that's provided. I've heard people say this, well, we do have one because if someone opts into emails on the donation form, then we're going to go add them to our email tool. Cool. There's a couple issues that reside in this type of thinking. One is the assumption that you have to have an opt-in checkbox on your donation form in order to send someone an email, which here in the United States, you do not have to. We can talk about that if you got questions about that, but you don't have to do that. In fact, you're going to miss out on communicating with a lot of people who want to hear from you who just didn't check that box. And then secondly, if you have to go actually add them to the email system, you're going to lose people along the way. That stuff takes time. If it's not automated, if you're manually doing that work, that's not what we're looking for in an effective new donor welcome series. I've heard people say this, that, well, they get a receipt and then they'll get a thank you note in the mail in a couple of weeks. So bam, they're onboarded, new donor welcome series. Again, these are good things. You should definitely send a receipt. You'd be shocked at how many people don't send a receipt. We have some data around that. Sending a thank you note in the mail is awesome. Reaching these people in a multi-channel way. If they donated for the first time online, you're also reaching them through the inbox or through the mailbox. That's fantastic. But waiting a couple weeks time is too long to really say thank you. And there's a lot more that you can do between now and when that thank you note arrives in the mailbox via the inbox where you can cultivate them effectively. And we'll talk about that. Finally, I've heard people say this too. Once we get a new donor, it takes us about 2 weeks to put them into our system, and then they'll get the onboarding series. And again, we can't wait 2 weeks for anyone who's just given a gift to actually receive meaningful communication from us. We have to immediately and instantly, especially in a digital world where we expect instant communication when we go buy something on Amazon. I gave an example in a recent presentation where I was looking for something on Amazon. I bought it and I get a notification in the app. I get an email, I get the package on my doorstep within 24 hours. It's like everything is expected to be instantaneous. And if we live in this world where it takes us, days, if not weeks, to actually move someone from one platform to the other, we don't have automated systems, we're missing the chance to go onboard someone in an effective and meaningful way. They might not even really remember that they gave a gift in 2 weeks. Not in the same way that when you have the chance to go welcome them in an instantaneous way. So how I would like to define the new donor welcome series, how I would encourage all of us to consider what is an effective new donor welcome series is this. It is a fixed length email series. So it has a start date and it has an end date. It's fixed length. It's automatically sent. So again, we're not manually moving people from system to system. We don't have to log into MailChimp or HubSpot and actually say send on the email. It just happens. It's automatic. It's sent to new donors, which is implied in the name, but we've got to make sure we have our targeting right and our triggers right to actually set up the series. Sent to new donors as soon as they give. It's designed to thank donors, to cultivate them, to activate a second gift, and ultimately, like the big macro goal of any new donor welcome series is to lead to better retention. So we would love to move someone into a position where they're ready to give a second gift in the first 30 to 90 days of being a new donor. But ultimately, what matters the most is that we're leading to better retention, that these donors are going to give to us again next year and the year after that and the year after that, which goes back to what y'all are saying in the comments about building relationships with donors in a meaningful way. We have to make a good first impression, and that's really what our goal is of this series. So you don't have to commit this definition to heart, but it's a good one to think on because all these different little pieces are going to be important as we move forward through the framework of the series. Some of you might be saying, we already have one. We're good. You showed me all those different things that are not a new donor welcome series. We kind of passed your little test there. I think we're good. We have one. How do you know that you might need a new one? How do you know that it's time for an upgrade or for an update or to test something new? I've got 5 reasons, and I've got some data and some experiments to go along with it. I will pause for a moment and say, if you've got any thoughts, any questions, just as we're going, drop them in the chat. I'd love to, again, we're trying to slow down as we're going into the second half of Level Up. Make sure that we can really thoroughly answer your questions as we go, because we have the time, we have the space for it. So I'm going to keep going, but if you've got thoughts, questions, ideas, feel free to drop them in the chat. So how do you know that you need a new donor welcome series? Reason number 1 is simply, if you don't have one, you definitely need one. And there's some really interesting data that we've seen as we conduct lots of different research, trying to understand what are nonprofits doing right now to try to grow giving. This is a study we conducted a few years ago. It's about 3-year-old data, and then I'll show you some more recent data, where we found, after donating to 147 organizations, we looked at 90 days of communication. We found that 45% of nonprofits sent nothing to a new donor who sent a check into the organization. So via the mail, 45% of nonprofits sent nothing to their new donor. That's almost half. That's like a super scary metric. That half of donors are just completely going unthanked and unrecognized for their gift. And this includes receipts. This includes any kind of thank you. Nothing. These donors just receive nothing within a 90-day window after giving. When you look at online, people who donated online, because we donated through the mailbox and we donated on their online form, 18% of nonprofits sent nothing to their new online donor. That number is technically smaller, but to me, it's a little bit scarier. Again, back to this idea that we live in this digital world where instantaneous communication is the expectation. And so for nearly 20% of nonprofits to send absolutely nothing to a new online digital donor within a 90-day window is just unbelievable. And this is not, just an isolated incident where we just happened to pick the right sample of organizations that just didn't have great communication. We've repeated the same study and we've seen similar results. And then as I poked around in other people's data, I've continued to see this as the trend. We conducted a study over the past year and a half or so, looking specifically to try to understand what things are working to lead to better donor retention. And part of this was looking at the new donor onboarding series. We found in this more recent study, a third of organizations didn't send any cultivation to a new donor within, again, a 90-day window. We're not talking like a week, 2 weeks, we're talking 3 full months. No form of cultivation to these new donors. And cultivation in this case is a pretty wide bucket. It's a pretty big bucket. It basically is just anything that's not asking for a donation. And a third of organizations didn't send anything that remotely resembled cultivation in a 90-day window. 51%, so over half of organizations actually made no attempt to ask for a second gift within the first 90 days of someone donating. So they're not trying to move someone either through cultivation or through a direct ask. They're not trying to move someone into a position where they're going to give again. It's kind of like a hope and pray strategy that maybe they'll come back someday and they'll give again. They donated once, maybe we don't reach out till year end or till some other date long into the future. And we can't get frustrated with our donor retention results if this is our strategy, if our strategy is kind of a hope and pray sort of strategy. What's interesting is when we look at some data from outside of the nonprofit universe, this is some data from GetResponse, which is a large email platform, and they're looking at 7 billion emails sent in 2021. You can see the footnote down there at the bottom. And what they're illustrating in this chart is engagement per email, kind of the further away that you get from that initial point of engagement. So it's basically counting the number of messages and from the first message sent to all the way down to 12, and what happens to things like open rate, click-through rate, and all these different metrics you see on the screen. And the general trend, although it kind of ebbs and flows and there's some peaks and there's some valleys, the trend line is that engagement rapidly decreases in those first 12 emails that are sent. And what this is implying is that the best time to actually go have someone's attention is right after they have had this kind of high point of engagement. The moment that they sign up, or the moment that they give, or the moment that they transact is their high point of engagement. And it's the best chance that we have to go make a good first impression and to have their attention specifically in the inbox. but just in general as well, even in the mailbox or face-to-face. So we have to follow up instantaneously and right away and take advantage of this kind of like new donor onboarding window, the first 30 days to make a good first impression. Campaign Monitor, another email platform, has some similar data. They suggest this, that welcome email read rates across their platform are 42% higher than the average email. Again, to this point, that this first initial window, this first couple weeks, first 30 days, especially the first 90 days, is a really critical window to go onboard someone effectively, because that's when you have their attention the most. You're never going to have their attention as much as you do when they make that first gift. So if you don't have an effective and intentional new donor series, then you absolutely need one. Reason number 2, we'll move a bit faster. We'll look at some test examples, some A/B tests. If your welcome series are sent from your organization's name and not from a real human being, you probably need to rethink your approach in general, and certainly at the tactical level of changing out some senders. This is a great little experiment. You can see the difference here. Version A is sent from a person, Jay Goldberg, who's the director at Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Most of us, you can tell me if I'm wrong in the chat, but most of us don't put both our title and our organization in the sender line of an email that we're going to send each other just out of Gmail or Outlook or whatever tool that you use. Usually it just says your name. They took it one step forward and they removed the organization name from the sender. So now it says Jay Goldberg, director. And it led to a 7% increase in opens. Now, they probably would have seen even better results had they just gotten rid of director entirely, but they're taking baby steps forward. They saw this increase by just starting to send from the human because it's a little bit more authentic. We've looked at this experiment in the past in some previous sessions, so we won't spend too much time here, but this is a holistic test moving from sending from a brand to sending from a person. Compassion International versus Audrey. Very branded language and subject line and copy to very personal, authentic, and genuine copy. And even just here at the email envelope level, they saw a 330% increase in opens, let alone the increased engagement further downstream in clicks and conversions and all that sort of stuff. So we have to send from a person. We have to build a series of emails that's authentically human, sent from people that are believable and genuine and authentic. Number 3, reason 3 that you might actually need I see comment in there, 330%, always surprises me. It's a shocking number. And it doesn't take that much work to go make that change either. Reason 3, the emails in your series look like best practice marketing emails using designed HTML templates with images and logos. And I'm not totally against images. I'm not totally against design inside of an email. I think there's a time and a place for it, but we have to understand what we're communicating when we use design. Here's an example. I know we've looked certainly at some tests around appeals when we spent time talking a couple months ago about designing an effective email appeal. This one is not asking for money. This is just a newsletter. You see version A versus version B. Version B still has a little bit of design. It's got the logo of the organization, that sort of stuff, but it's a much more simplified approach. Version A uses a lot of design in those big blocks with images and buttons and all that sort of stuff. Sending a bit more of a human-centric email that just says, hi, friend, here's a little bit of a note of some things I put together for you. Bam, 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 3 bullet points of resources you click through. This approach led to a 77% increase in clicks. This is a lot more people actually choosing to engage with the content because it was a more simplified approach that was from a believable human being. So our design has to authenticate the approach that we're trying to take. If we're trying to build relationships, we don't want to go send these big, giant, huge branded emails. And also, it's way easier to put the email on the right together than it is the email on the left together. So if you're struggling for time because you're juggling like 100 different roles at once, this is a great way to just simplify your life a little bit. Just use a plain text email template because it probably is going to perform better and it's going to save you a couple hours of laying out an email. Here's one other example. This is from our own marketing. So this is not just a nonprofit thing. This happens, you actually probably see this in your own inbox from other organizations, other companies as well. But even for us, as we're trying to talk to people just like you and bring you into what we're learning through data and bring you into what we're learning through experimentation, all that sort of stuff. We've tested similar things. Version A has a lot of images and buttons and all that sort of stuff. Version B still has some formatting to the email. It's got one image, an example of an experiment in there. It's not void of design, but it's a lot more simplified. And guess what? Led to a 37% increase in clicks. So if you've never actually tried this strategy in your cultivation emails, you might put that to the test to see what it actually does for you. Reason number 4, I've got 5 total reasons, so bear with me, and then we'll have a little activity here. Reason number 4 that you might need a new series is that your current welcome series isn't focused on cultivation. If you're mainly focused on sharing just sort of passive updates about your organization, or you're focused on sharing some other ways that people can give, whether that's, making a legacy gift or giving through stock or crypto or whatever, if that's the focus of your welcome series and your onboarding, then you might be missing the mark, because cultivation is a huge part of this to onboard people well and to lead to better retention. Here's a quick little example. Version A of this onboarding series has 7 emails. They start with a survey, and then they have an about email, and then they have a series of 3 different donation asks. They then make a direct appeal. Those donation asks are kind of like soft asks. They're telling a little bit of a story and saying, hey, this is meaningful to you. Would you consider giving? And then they make a direct appeal, and then they hand you off to the newsletter. Version B, and I believe we've talked about this as we talked about just content offers in the year-end, during the year-end series. But the treatment here, very similar start with a survey, the about email, and then they have a series of 6 different ebooks that they send out. It's cultivation. It's basically saying, hey, here's a really interesting book we put together that you might find valuable about a particular topic that's related to the organization and the cause. So they've got 6 of these different offer emails, and then they hand you off to the newsletter. They do not make a direct appeal, but they saw a 920% increase in donations. They led with cultivation, but they used it as a pathway to lead someone towards the opportunity to give. So it looks something like this, and we're going to break this down over the next couple of months so you're really equipped to go employ this strategy for your organization. But again, they're sending this email it's framed as cultivation. It's not another appeal. It's talking about, in this case, an ebook that would be of interest and value about a particular topic or issue. You come then to a landing page when you click through where you can read more about the offer. You might have a picture of it right there too, so you can see like, okay, this is what the ebook looks like. It's really just going to be a PDF. That's a download, but you're visualizing it. There's a form there that asks for first name, last name, email address, where you can fill that out, say, yes, send me this ebook. This is really interesting to me. And then you land on what we call the instant donation page, which is a confirmation page, but it takes a very different approach. It doesn't just ask you to go share that you downloaded this thing on Facebook, on X, on TikTok, which I think you can do. We couldn't do it for what 14 hours or something. It was shut down, but it's back. But it instead of focusing on sharing on social media, that sort of stuff, it's focused on leading you towards the next step of giving. So it might say, thank you so much, and insert their first name, and then it moves into an appeal. And sometimes it's a long form appeal that's asking someone to give. And so that's what we're trying to do on this instant donation page. So this organization, in that test I just showed you, used this model as a means of leading with cultivation, but it got people to the point of actually giving, and it led to this huge uptick in people actually making a donation. So we can focus on cultivation, but create pathways towards giving. Last one for you. If you've never run an A/B test in your new donor welcome series, or if you haven't touched it in a couple of years, number one, you should probably just go read through it, make sure it's still accurate. All the links point to the right places, because sometimes that stuff changes and it breaks. But if you've never really tested inside of your series to really determine what's most effective, this is a great opportunity to sort of step back, look at it with fresh eyes, maybe hit reset on a couple of things and test a new approach. If you can run a holistic A/B test in your welcome series, it might be one of the most powerful A/B tests that you will ever run in your fundraising and marketing and communications career. Here's one example. And again, I believe I've shown you this, but now we're looking at it in a different context. Version A versus version B, they're both different onboarding series. These are actually new email onboarding series. So the goal of these is to get someone to make a donation for the first time. Version A uses this kind of very traditional approach where it's got lots of branding and logos and photos and buttons and all that sort of stuff. They're both 7 emails long, but the focus is a little bit different. You can see that version B on the right side of the screen, it leads with a reply back email, which we talked about as we went through our whole year-end timeline. or they're asking people to hit the reply button and actually have a conversation. Again, building that relationship in the inbox. They have a couple resources they share. There's another reply back email. They have a product offer that's in there. They share a couple of resources and they end with a direct ask. But all throughout, you can see the difference visually in the emails. They're plain text style in approach, so they're not using all this heavy design. They're relational and they're conversational in their tone and in their messaging. They're focused on aligning beliefs, which we're going to talk about when we get to the thank you and the welcome email here in a little bit. They have one call to action. They're not asking people to do a bunch of different things per email. They're asking people to do one thing at a time. They're sent from human beings, not from a brand name, as we've talked about. They're asking, again, for people to hit the reply button. They're encouraging conversation and relationship. And then ultimately, when they make a direct ask, they're making a specific donation ask, saying, will you give this amount of money? They're making it specific and they're making it clear. And what they found was increases across the board in opens, in clicks, in huge increases in donations, leading to a very sizable increase in revenue. So this is the approach that we're trying to create when we put together a new donor onboarding series, as well as a new email welcome series. That's something we can talk about as well, but we're focused on new donor today. This is what we're trying to do, is create this humanized experience where we're connecting someone with a human being, or maybe human beings, multiple people at your organization, where there is a relationship that's authentic and is being built. So that trust is built, community is built, and we give ourselves a much better shot of having that donor stick around. A couple other interesting data points that you may want to know. As we've looked at kind of donation activity from a variety of different organizations, we see a really interesting trend. These are three very different organizations, but the trend is about the same. The numbers fluctuate a bit, but the trend is there. Within that first 90 days, there's huge activity of new donors that are willing to give that second gift. So this chart is looking at, of the people that give a second gift, when do they give it in their first 12 months of being a new donor? The biggest opportunities in the first 90 days. You see the social services organization, 44% of second gifts are coming in those first 90 days, 36% for a missions org, 28% for a higher ed organization. So there's fluctuations, but there's a tremendous amount of activity here. And so we want to capitalize on that and see, can we see that actually increase if we're intentional about our communication? This is one of my favorite stats, and it might be a transformational stat for you. As we've been looking across all the different organizations that we work with, we have kind of I call it a 360 view into all of their data. We found this, that a new donor who just gives one time in their first year, their first 12 months of being a new donor, their likelihood to retain into year two is about 21%. Doesn't sound amazing. It's not a super, exhilarating stat. It means that, 79% of our new donors are just gone if they give to you just one time in their first year. And we're just talking about one-time gifts. We're not talking about recurring. We're talking about one-time gifts. If you can get that new donor to give to you one additional time, just one additional one-time gift within their first 12 months, their retention rate goes through the roof. That's a 114% increase in new donor retention, up to a 45% likelihood to retain into year two, if you can get them to give that second gift within their first 12 months. And moving the needle on retention is really, really hard, because usually you got to wait 2-3 years to really see, are we getting anywhere with retention? We tried this thing in this campaign, or we tried this initiative, 3 years ago, and now we're looking at those donors to see, are they retaining better than previous donors or other donors? But it's really hard to know, is it this one strategy I tried out 3 years ago, or was it all these other potential things that could have influenced their likelihood of giving? This type of stat lets us zero in on a strategy. That is, how do we get that person who gave once this year to just give one more time this year? Because if they do, it's going to send their retention rate through the roof. And if they're going to give again in year two, their likelihood of becoming a key multi-year donor, which is your most valuable donor, continues to go up as well. So the new donor welcome series, as we're going to talk about it and break it down, is really focused on how do we get more of these one-time donors to give that second gift in that first really 30 days, but definitely 90 days, with a focus on increasing retention for the long term. And there's other good news too from some interesting data. Our friends at Bloomerang have shared this in a blog post they have all about retention, where they find that new donors who just simply receive a phone call within the first 90 days are 25% more likely to retain. So there's very specific things that we can do, very tactical things that we can do that can move the needle in a really meaningful and powerful way that not just increases retention, but it increases ultimately the impact that your organization can have. Because you got greater trust that these donors that you're working hard to acquire are going to stick around, which increases their value to you, the revenue coming in, which increases the impact that you're able to have. I've talked a lot for the past 30 minutes, and I want to pause and I want to give you a little bit of time to go just experience what's it like to be a new donor for your organization. It's really easy to sit on this side of the fence as the fundraiser, as the marketer, as the communications director, whatever your exact role is. I don't know everyone's job title. Whatever your exact role is, it's easy to sit on this side of the fence and assume that things are fine. Oh, we're working hard and we've got some great things that go out and donors receive this, that, and the other thing. And, they're going to have a great experience. The reality is when we actually step into it as a donor, sometimes the experience is not what we expect it to be. So what I want you to do is pull up that worksheet that's linked up in the chat and that I showed you at the very beginning. What I want you to do is actually go make a donation to your organization. It doesn't have to be anything major. It can be as low as $5, or if you know that there's sort of a floor or a threshold that I've got to give at least $10 to get a receipt or something, try to give it that threshold at that minimum. Just make a small little gift, and I want you to see what happens. That worksheet has a few questions. I think there's 5 questions on it to fill out kind of as you go. This isn't a comprehensive analysis of the whole donation experience, but I want you to see what happens right away when a new donor gives to your organization, and make some notes as you go as to what would you change, what would you improve, what would you even test to try to improve that experience for a new donor. So I will leave this up on the screen for a moment. I'm going to share a little bit of just music in the background so you can kind of have a little bit of space to work. If you've got a question as you're going, feel free to drop it in the chat, but I'm going to give you a few minutes to go make that gift, and then we'll have a little bit of time to go share what you experienced and what you learned. Sound good? Becca's got a great question here in the chat. Feel free to keep working. I'm not trying to interrupt you, but I just wanted to talk about it because I think it's an interesting one, and maybe one that you have too. She's saying that they have done some testing on should they be sending from their CEO's name versus their organization name, and they've actually seen that the name of the CEO does outperform the name of the organization. However, that's not the whole story. On the other side of that, they've tested just some other staff members' names against their organization name and seen that the organization name has a higher open rate. So they're hesitant to have too many emails come from the CEO, which is completely understandable because your CEO is going to get totally overwhelmed. I completely get that. I kind of skipped over a little note on that slide earlier when we were talking about this test. I'll pull it back up here real quick. We were talking about this experiment and the difference in performance here. You see, they received 1,500 responses within their testing window when they use this more human, authentic approach. And they ultimately, what they had to do was go hire a part-timer to go manage the inbox here. And in this case, it was very justified because you can see the donation and revenue difference here. They had so much revenue coming in additional from this series that they were able to go hire some part-time help to go help kind of manage and triage inboxes and all that sort of stuff. That's what a lot of organizations do that employ this strategy when you have a pretty high volume of replies and responses, is just, can you go assign it to, you don't necessarily have to go hire someone. Is there someone who does have some capacity on your team to actually just go manage some of the inbox? So what we even do at Next After, because if you're on our email list, you probably get emails from me at least weekly, as we send out something called Winston's Weekly. And I don't see all those replies. Like, spoiler alert, I don't read every single thing that comes in. We've got people on our marketing team that see some of that stuff. And when it really is important, it gets forwarded over to me. So we use, I'll let you in on our inside secret. If you see an email from nathan.hill@nextafter.com, that's like the marketing email address. It still has my name in it. It looks authentic. It looks personal, but that's not my personal email address. That goes to a HubSpot inbox where we go watch the conversations and replies that come in, and someone on our marketing team manages those, and then they forward it over to my real email address when it's something that I personally need to respond to. But most of the replies are going to be, hey, thanks so much for that encouragement, or, oh, you're looking for this resource, it's right here, here's a link for it. And so we have other people on our team that are capable of going and finding some of those answers and responding back as me. And you could also do it in some ways where you say, hey, I'm jumping in for Nathan here. Want to make sure that you got a timely reply. So you can employ a strategy like that if really you're seeing that it's most effective to send from your CEO all the time. The other thing I would suggest to you, Becca, to think about is it's okay to vary your senders. You oftentimes, and I know you're applying some testing, which is ideal. Oftentimes, what we see is when you vary your sender every now and again, you're going to see just a slight bump in opens. So it might be if you're sending from a person and then for a while, and then you send from the organization name one time, like, oh, that's something different. I'm going to open that. So it might be sort of like short-term returns when you test out some of those senders. It also is really, really hard in this day and age, in the past couple of years, to go accurately test for opens and measure that accurately. There's been so much change just on the technology side with how opens are even measured that it's become a pretty unreliable metric. So when I show you an experiment that has a lift or a decrease in opens, most of those tests were tested like 3 or 4 years ago, which maybe sounds like, oh, is that old data? But it's the most concrete data we have on opens, where again, it's a little bit less reliable the past couple of years to actually accurately test on opens. So ideally, we're really testing for metrics like clicks or ultimately conversions like donations to really know if something is most effective. So I don't know if that fully answers your question or gives you the exact way to go, but hopefully that's a few things to kind of color in the picture and to think about as you make decisions on who to send from. Okay. We spent a good amount of time, hopefully, making some donations. I'm really curious what you have uncovered. Hopefully, it was helpful to actually experience what it's like to be a donor for just a moment. Some of you probably felt some pain in the process. Some of you were probably excited about the experience. I asked you a bunch of questions in this worksheet. Were you able to actually successfully give? Were you asked to take a next step on the confirmation page? Even how'd you feel at the end? I gave you this little scale, 0 to 3, on did you feel welcomed and thanked and informed? Do we have any brave souls who want to share a little bit about their experience? You're welcome to just let me know in the chat, and then I'll select you, and then you can actually unmute and even just talk through, hey, here's what I learned as I went. Does anyone want to share what they actually learned along this little exercise here? I see Katie has a note in the chat. Katie, you're welcome to actually just jump in and talk if you want to. If you don't, I can read it out. She says, because we were using the Colorado Gives platform, the first information a donor sees both on the confirmation page and the thank you receipt about Colorado Gives and Mighty Cause, but I'm not sure that we can change that. You do have some good customization tools inside of the platform to change a lot of the messaging. There might be, I don't know for sure, there might be some design things that you're kind of locked into. But you can certainly tweak a lot of the messaging and customize the thank you messages that are on those pages. I think I've got a slide that shows that here in a little bit too.
Yeah, the messaging, you have to scroll down to see our message. The what's at the top of the page is about Colorado Gives and Mighty Cause.
Gotcha. Did you happen to get an email receipt or an email thank you? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
How'd you feel at the end of that experience? Did you feel thanked and welcomed, or do you feel like there's things you can do to improve it?
I would say I felt okay about it, not great, and I'm not sure we can change things like the subject line, and who it comes from. I'll have to dig more in to see what we can change. The message that was there from us is good. It's just really, it's buried.
Gotcha.
Well, and I'll jump in here, Katie. That's good feedback. So for people who are using the Colorado Gives platform for your year-round donations or any campaign, you have the thank you page that you can update. And Katie is correct. When someone lands on a thank you page after the transaction, there is a very general note from Colorado Gives at the top, and then your custom information lower. You can build in call to actions within your section of the customization. The other thing, Katie, that you had referenced was the receipt. And so I'm so glad you got the receipt. That's what we want to hear right after the transaction. That really is just the transactional receipt. And then we do give you the option to put in some feel-good information. What I hear so often is like, yeah,
Colorado Gives sends the automated receipt, so we don't have to do it. And that's true. All of the tax deductible information and legal info is in that receipt. That's not the feel good stuff that the donor wants from you guys. So don't rely on that receipt as the only touch point that happens in the next 90 days. But Katie, you're right. There are some elements to that receipt, like the subject, that you can't change. You can only change the messaging within the receipt content. Thank you for bringing that up.
So that's good feedback to take to heart on this side, because those are things that Jordan and team can work on the platform side to see what improvements and features can there be to just continue to make that experience more personal. But also, I mean, I want you to know that using this platform compared to other platforms, like every platform has limitations, and you oftentimes are going to have to find another way to go kind of create pathways, even use some automation, using some integrations to go set up this new donor welcome series. And so we're going to talk about that as we go, like what additional tools might you need kind of on the back end of this to go execute a really effective onboarding series beyond just the kind of transactional receipt, but actually triggering an effective welcome email and more. I see Joan's here. She's ready to go. Joan, do you want to share about your experience?
Well, I took your welcome series course that you guys offered, and so I wanted to implement something for Colorado Gives. I could only convince my ED into a 4 email welcome series. She felt like the 10 was too much, but we haven't seen like an increase in second donations yet. But what I did was I got amazing results. So I think I had about we're a small donor base, so had about 113 welcome people to welcome during Colorado Gives, and we had like an 80% open rate, and I got responses though from about half of those people, because we did ask for them to tell us about their library story and to give us a book recommendation that we could make a list out of. And so I think the thing we were most excited about was automating it through Salesforce, using Salesforce Flow, and then also just hearing from those people, which our emails in the past hadn't done, because they hadn't asked for a response. And so that was very exciting for us.
That's amazing. Congrats, Joan. That's huge. Something we talk about just internally at Next Chapter pretty often is like the secret metric of email that really shows the success is like, do people reply? Like that's why email exists in the first place, is to create a means for people to communicate. And so if no one's replying, like there's probably something that's missing here. So that's a really cool example. Thank you for jumping in and sharing. We're going to keep rolling. I'm just keeping an eye on time. I want to keep moving and get through these couple of emails here, but we'll have one more activity, and hopefully we'll leave a little bit of time to share after that as well. So let's keep rolling. Let's talk about the framework. We're not going to get through every single email in this framework. There are 8 specific emails that I would highly recommend that you send. Out of those 8, the ones that are starred on your screen is like the bare minimum. And so as Joan just said, they couldn't get a 10 email series over the line, but they can get 4. It's a great starting place. What we're going to talk about today, we'll see if we have time to get to the content offer email. But we're definitely going to talk about the thank you email, and we're going to talk about the welcome email. So what are those first couple communications that you should send out right away in those first couple of days? Again, this is not just the transactional receipt, but this is follow-up communication. How do you thank someone effectively? How do you then onboard them well and welcome them into your community of people that have similar and aligned values and beliefs about how the world should be and change you want to see in the world, all that sort of stuff. So we're going to outline those couple of emails, and I'm going to give you then some space to actually go work on the outline for your welcome email. If we have time, we'll cover the content offer email, but I'm looking at time, we may run out. And that's okay. Again, we're slowing down. We're trying to make sure that we thoroughly cover all this stuff so y'all are very equipped to go implement some good things that can lead to better results. So let's talk about the thank you email for a little bit. The thank you email, again, as you can see from this framework, is sent on day 1. You might have this immediate receipt that you're sending right out of Colorado Gives. In fact, you should absolutely have that. I don't want to count that yet as your thank you email. I would rather you send something else that looks more authentic, that looks more like a genuine message, that you saw a donation come in, and so you jumped right in your inbox and you wrote that person a personal note. You can automate that. You can write it in a way that feels that level of personal authenticity. I don't want you having to do that every single time. Again, we're trying to automate this process, but that is what we want it to feel like. So in this thank you email, let's look at some of the goals. The goals would be really threefold, and you'll see this in both this email and the welcome email. We're trying to, first of all, build trust. They've just given us their money, and we want to make sure that they know that they can trust our organization and they can trust you personally to make sure it gets applied where they want it to go and to something really meaningful. So we're trying to build trust. We're trying to increase competency. And that may sound like a strange thing, but really what we're trying to do is help this person who was just given be competent in their understanding of the issue, of the cause that they're giving to, of where their money is going, and that it's actually being put to really good use to go make a meaningful difference. If I give to you, I make $100 donation, and by the end of it, I'm not quite really sure what that gift is going to do or how it's being put to good use, or I can't go have an intelligent conversation with a friend about how you're using that money well, what's the likelihood that I give to you again if I don't really have that full understanding to talk about it in a meaningful way? And then connectedness. We want to start to establish this bond and this feeling of connectedness that this person who was just given to your organization is not alone in the things that they care about. We want to make sure that they know they are part of now a community of people, a community of generous people who are giving to go affect something meaningful. So we're building trust, we're helping increase their understanding and their knowledge, and we're trying to make them feel connected. There's a lot of different people that you could send this email from. Ultimately, I would send it from a human being. You might send this from your chief development officer or whatever kind of the equivalent title is at your organization as sort of that initial thank you and sort of initial welcome. We'll have a longer welcome email in a moment, but this is that initial interaction where you're really trying to thoroughly thank someone. A couple things to keep in mind. You don't have to commit this to memory. You'll have these slides, so you can see this checklist later. A few things to keep in mind, though, as you put this together. It's solely focused on thanking new donors. We're not trying to insert some other kind of call to action or pivot towards like, thank you. And also we have this event coming up and we want to tell you about that. We're just saying thank you. We want to confirm that the donation has been made, that we want to confirm the tax deduction eligibility. We don't need to spend too much time doing that, but you can confirm those things briefly. Express your gratitude, obviously, for the gift. Refer to them. You'll see this in the language we'll look at in a moment, but call them a generous person. Talk about their generosity and affirm that that is a good thing. And that is a really meaningful and a really valuable thing. Encourage that. That's ultimately what we're trying to encourage into the future if our aim is donor retention. Share as much as you can how the donation is going to be put to use. That doesn't mean that you have to have an exact like one-to-one, we took your gift and we applied it here already, or it's going to this person, or it's going to this family, or it's going to this animal. But share a story, share a quick little testimonial, something like that, so that people can start to put a picture together of how their gift is actually going to be used. Provide contact info for someone to follow up, whether that's directly with you or that's with like a donor support team, but make sure that there's a clear way for someone to actually follow up and ask questions or get more information if they need it. And then again, don't ask them to do anything else. The thank you email is not designed to get someone to go engage with some other piece of content. It's not designed to get someone to go make another gift. It's not designed to get someone to go sign up for an event or volunteer. We just want to say thank you. We want to make sure that they know that's all we're trying to do. Is just express gratitude. So that's what we want to do in this email. A couple quick things from this example you've seen on your screen. This is from Prison Fellowship International. This is what happens after you give a gift. I won't read the whole email to you, but I'll call out a couple of things. It says, Dear Trent, who's our kind of donor persona here, thank you for your support of Prison Fellowship International. They're saying thank you right away. We're grateful for your generosity. It could be as simple as that they're encouraging generous behavior and that value of leaning into generosity. So say thanks and encourage that generosity. You see some other things in here. They're showing how the gift is being used through some impact stories. So they're not saying your gift just went specifically to this family or to this person, but they're saying, hey, here's where your gift is going. You're helping us care for nearly 6,000 children of prisoners in 9 countries. And then they get into a little bit of a story about someone named Yvonne in Rwanda and what's going on in her life and how a gift through Prison Fellowship is actually helping this type of person and this specific person. You're helping prisoners like Yvonne's parents too, and explains more of those details. So you can tell those kinds of stories without drawing a one-to-one connection and saying your gift did exactly this, or it's going to this person, but help color in the picture so they can see the meaning and the impact of their gift. Ultimately, at the bottom, if you have any questions, we can be reached at this number, and here's our donor support email. So they're providing a clear way for someone to actually ask questions, get more information, and follow up as they need it. They even are inviting a reply. They say, if you have a spare moment, would you share with us how you learned about our organization? Just a little touch that invites that reply that Joan was talking about to make sure that you're establishing that human relationship. So that's a great little example. And you've seen this before, but just to reiterate it, the power of personalization, just calling someone by name, making sure that you can have that extra little personal touch if you don't already have it set up in your thank yous, leading to this big 270% increase in clicks. Make sure we call those donors by name and lean into both the personalization in terms of name, but also just in tone and authenticity. Again, you have some tools inside of coloradogives.org to customize some of that initial messaging that shows up on the confirmation page, as well as in that receipt email. This is a great start. If you haven't done this yet, make sure that you do this. Jump in and go customize this messaging using some of the things from that checklist we just walked through. Again, I would encourage you to actually send an additional dedicated thank you email. That's not just about getting the receipt out, but is just there to go express gratitude for the donor. If you're trying to set that up and you don't have any of that stuff set up, there are a bunch of built-in integrations into the platform. There is an additional cost if you don't have access to these. I believe Jordan said it's $69 a month, but she can correct me on that. But this might be one of the best investments that you make, because unlocking some of these integrations is going to empower this strategy and a bunch of other things that we can talk about over the coming months related to acquisition and retention and onboarding and all sorts of things. So integrating with Salesforce, integrating with MailChimp, integrating with any other email tool that you're using Zapier. These are going to be essentials to actually empowering a strategy like this, where you can automate some of these ongoing nurture series, cultivation series, to really lean into retention as a strategy. All right, so that's the thank you email. Again, you'll get those slides, so you have that checklist you can walk through as you're trying to craft this and put it together. Let's talk about the welcome email specifically, and that's where we're going to land for today. The welcome email has effectively the same kind of macro level goals here. We're still trying to build trust. We're still trying to educate and build that competency for the new donor so they can intelligently understand and talk about the impact of their gift. And then also foster that sense of connectedness. And that's really where we're going to lean in here in the welcome email. You can send this from a variety of people. It could be a follow-up from the initial thank you email. It might be introducing a new voice. Again, those are different things you can test out, but it must be from a person. And we'll talk a little bit about this IJM example here in a moment, but really the checklist is pretty simple. I don't want to overly prescript what this email should look like, because it can look a lot of different ways. Some of you might have videos you want to share. Others might have long form stories you want to share. They can look a lot of different ways. But these are the three things that I want you to make sure that you have in it. First of all, you need to be able to state and share some of your values, your core beliefs, your mission as an organization, and whom you're trying to serve. That doesn't mean you have to have a bulleted list of here's all the values, here's our mission statement, here's everything we believe, and here's all the key groups of people we're trying to impact. But you can start to explain that either through narrative or through testimonies and stories and that sort of stuff. But we want to go share those core beliefs and those core values so that someone who's just given understands that not only did I just give to a cause that I care about, but the people that are working on this, I can relate to. They care about this stuff as much as I do. So as much as you can lean into those kind of shared beliefs and ideals and values is going to really lean into that connectedness goal to help people feel like they're part of this community that's like me, that cares about the same things that I do. Secondly, we want to reflect on the community that they've joined, talk about that there's other people that care about this stuff, that you're invited into this generous community of people who care about making this type of an impact. And then we want to invite them to learn more. So you will have a call to action. It might be linking to an article. It could be linking to a dedicated video that you have just for these welcome series donors. It might be some other piece of content. I don't know what all you have access to, but I would plan to have something that you're linking people to as kind of a next step to keep them moving and engaging deeper with your organization to learn more about you, learn more about where they've just given, and see more of the impact of their giving. So pretty basic checklist. I mean, it's only 3 things, but there's a lot of room in there for you to customize this and shape this to your organization as you need to. One other comment on that too is this is a great chance to go take some of those great lessons that you've learned in the copywriting course from Institute for Sustainable Philanthropy and plug it into this sort of shell and this template. I'm not the world's best copywriter, but we've learned a lot through testing about what works. And so I would encourage you to take this framework and then go apply those copywriting techniques to write something really meaningful to go invite these new donors in. Katie's asking, how would you plan to have a printed or mailed thank you fit into the onboarding series? I don't have an exact template for where that fits in, but if you can do that, I would absolutely make sure that you're kind of integrating in a multi-channel way. Some things that can be really quick and easy is just sending a little postcard. There's even tools that can automate doing that for you, that do the handwriting script and all that sort of stuff. But having some of those multi-channel touch points is really effective as well. We've certainly seen that the more you lean into multi-channel, the more visible you tend to be to the donor. And oftentimes that multi-channel donor who you can contact in multiple different channels has a higher value than one that you're only trying to reach in a singular channel. Here's that IJM example. A couple things I'll call out from it. We'll kind of scroll down. You can see in the copy they're inviting the donor again into this community. They're saying, with you, we are a community of activists, abolitionists, prayer partners, and justice seekers fighting to end modern day slavery and violence against people in poverty around the world. I love the language here because they say, with you, we are this. They're not saying we are this and we want you to be part of it. They're saying that like you primarily are this and we're joining you in this work. We're able to partner with you to make this thing happen that you really care about. So it's a really interesting, like small little tweak, but potentially really impactful tweak in the language to put the donor first and talk about how you're supporting their goals. But they're inviting them into this community of shared values and beliefs. And then down below, they're even setting expectations for what's going to come next, which is a great way to even mitigate against opt-outs and unsubscribes. Just set the right expectations up front. In the coming weeks, you're going to start receiving stories about survivors, updates on how the fight to end slavery is growing, and opportunities for you to make a greater impact. So you can set those expectations even in your welcome email of what they can expect from you and to hear from you over the next coming weeks. One other little test example for you. We talked about needing to just ask people to do one thing at a time. Don't, when you put this welcome email together, don't list out a bunch of next steps and a bunch of different links and articles and all sorts of things. Just ask them to engage with one thing. Here's why. Version A and version B. These emails are pretty different in the sense that version A is trying to get you to engage with like 6 different stories and 6 different things. You see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different links in version A. Version B technically has 2 links, but they both go to the same place. So it's like there's really one call to action. They're trying to drive people towards one thing. They ran this test to see which was going to be more effective at getting someone to do anything. And what they found is it's more effective to just send one thing, just ask people to do one thing at a time. So I'd encourage you, again, in your welcome email, where it can be tempting to list out, here's all the things that you need to know, then you should go read this article, and you should go watch this video, and you should go think about joining this event, and maybe even volunteer, and also follow us on all these different social platforms. Don't do that. Just do one thing at a time, because you're going to have a better chance of getting someone to do something if you just ask for one thing, rather than 6 or 7 at once. I'm going to skip over the content offer email. We'll come back to this, and we'll look at the content offer next week, because I want to make sure you have a little bit of time to work on this welcome email. This is one of the most critical things to get right, to set the right expectation. And so we're going to have a little working session again. You can pull up that activity sheet, that worksheet that I shared at the very beginning. You can find the link in your chat if you don't have it, but hopefully it's up on your screen. If you need it again, let us know. We can go find the link and surface it here, but go pull up that activity sheet. There's a few questions on there. On the second tab, nothing overly difficult. There's only 4 of them, but who are you going to send it from? What core values and beliefs does your organization have that your donor really should be aware of? What's the mission of your organization? And then what are you going to ask them to do next? So not overly complicated questions, but I want you to take some time and think about these things. Think through, what are those core beliefs? If you got to go pull out core values page that you have, or pull it up on your website and kind of think through what are the things we really need to share. Maybe you even have to have some additional homework from this to go have some conversations about what are our core values, what are our core beliefs, what kind of things do we want to share with these donors. But take about 10 minutes, work through this, start to make sort of your outline. If you get through this, you can actually go pull up a Word doc or a Google Doc and go start actually writing the email if you want to. But this is what I'd like for you to get through in the next, we'll say 8 to 10 minutes here. And then we'll have a little extra sharing time. You can share kind of what you've worked on and where your head's at now that we're getting towards the end of this session on the welcome series. So I'll put a little bit of music on, and I want you to go work on outlining your welcome email. All right, let's finish up. And I would love it if we had a couple of people who are willing to share a little bit about what they worked on. Again, who's your sender? What's one core value you're going to reinforce in this email? And then what are you going to ask the donor to do next? So feel free to just drop a note in the chat if you're willing to share. And then I'll invite you to just turn your video on and your audio on and let us know what you've worked on. Any brave souls who want to share what they've worked on with their welcome email? I will say, you sharing is a great opportunity for you can get some feedback from not just myself, but also the group in the comments and things, but also it might be really encouraging to others who are trying to figure out exactly what should they reinforce and how far they should go in terms of sharing their core values and things like that. So it might be a really big encouragement to the rest of the group if you were willing to. I'll give you another moment here for any volunteers. If not, I won't force you. Then we can move on to some homework. Heather's ready to share. Thank you, Heather, for breaking the ice for us. And Joan, pasting all of her answers in the chat for us all to see. That's amazing. Heather, do you want to share your answers to these 3 questions on the screen?
Sure. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Our email sender, I think, is just going to be our CEO. We're very small. We don't have very many positions. So we're just going to go from there. And our core value is, this is one of the things we say is like, we're do disaster recovery. So disasters don't discriminate, and therefore neither do we. So we don't really care about, who crosses our paths. We'll take anybody. And what we'd ask them to do next is and we've never done this before, but I just thought about this while we were sitting this. We have like a disaster Q&A kind of page on our webpage that's just like, here's what happens, this is why we do this, here's some random stats. So I think we just like send people there for more information to learn more. Cool.
That sounds like a great place to pull a bunch of stuff for your copy for this email and many others to come to. So there's no problem in reinforcing that multiple times too. That's a great idea. Thank you for sharing.
Yep.
Anyone else, now that Heather's broken the ice for us? It's not hard, it's not scary. Steven's ready. Here we go.
So I have our sender being our CEO, BB Kleinman, and I just have it being just BB Kleinman, not like saying CEO or anything, kind of just like having her name. Our core values, we believe that everyone should have access to affordable and accessible healthcare to promote better health and well-being. And then we've done this. We started it actually right before Colorado Gives Day with sending like a little thank you email to all the online donations that we have. And within that, we have a link to a 2-question survey just to kind of get someone's feedback of what kind of communications they would like to receive moving forward.
That's great. Yeah. To that point earlier, setting good expectations, you can give the chance for the donor to hit reply or even through a survey to tell you what they want, how they want to be communicated with. That's awesome. Cool. Anyone else? Probably time for one more before we jump to homework. Anyone else want to share?
I can, Nathan. So ours come from me, the donor development specialist. And the value we really want to I guess highlight to them is, the libraries being open and welcoming to all. We want to be a place where you come in and you feel that all the resources we provide are there for you. And so we really want to thank people for making that part of our community when we send that first email. And then we're a little weird because we don't have our own social media. The library does. We're working on that as a possibility. And so, but we do have a living staff reading list of our favorites. And so we give them a link to click on that. That way they can see what we're reading at this time.
That's cool. I love that. I mean, obviously it's very related to the work you do, but it's also very personal. Like, get to know these people. What a fun way to create that community. Love it. Thank you, Joan. I appreciate you sharing. Okay, friends. Well, hopefully this has been helpful to have a little bit of this time to actually, put your brain down on paper or virtual paper, if you will, as we're kind of going through some of these lessons. We're going to try to do this more and more as we go over the next few months of the rest of our level up time together here. If you have any further thoughts or feedback just on how this went, feel free to send me a note in Slack and say, hey, I really liked how we did this, or hey, I really hated this. Like, either way is fine, but open to any and all feedback so we can just keep improving this time for you all. So thanks for kind of working through that with me. We'll plan to do some more of that. Here's our homework. Let me make sure my screen's sharing. Here we go. Okay, here's our homework for the next month. So you got a little bit of time to work on this. I would encourage you to not delay on it, and work on this like the day before our next session. It will take a little bit of time, but it's not overly complicated, especially now that you have an outline. I want you to go write this email, not just the outline, but actually work through all the copy, lock in who you're sending it from, write it in that authentic and genuine voice. Use some of those lessons learned from your copywriting course you've been going through as well and apply it to your copy here. You might say, we already have one of these. I want you to at least consider rewriting it with some of these tactics we've talked about today, using the kind of 3 checklist framework. So write your new donor welcome email, and then you can go scan this QR code, or I'll drop all your homework in Slack so you can see it there too. But you can go fill out this quick form. It's very simple. It's your email address, so we know who is submitting the homework, who you're sending your email from, and then you can just paste in your copy. So you don't have to have a full like design layout and all that sort of stuff. Just put the draft of your copy in so that we can see what you've worked on and that you've completed the assignment. So that's your homework, not overly complicated. It might be something you can knock out even in the next 30 minutes after the session is over. I'll post all that in Slack, as well as links to these other resources too, so that you have those. If you want to get ahead and you want to dive even deeper, Joan mentioned this course a little bit ago, that she's actually taken this. This is available to you through your membership to the Next After Institute. And so this course is normally $299, but again, all of our courses are available to you for free as being part of this program. So we have a full course that dives even deeper than what we're going to go into today or in our next session, that walks through all these different emails, and it can be a good refresher for you as well if you kind of want to go back and say, what did we say about that? What was this experiment? Anyway, that's a great course for you. If you don't have access still to our online courses and you would like it, you can go to nextafter.com/level-up-membership. I believe Jordan posted that link in the chat a little bit ago. We can put it back in there again as well. I think I've got it on hand here. So if you haven't signed up to get access to all of our courses, you can do so at this link. You can also go scan that QR code if that's easier. Jordan, if you have that to share, that'd be awesome. My screen's just kind of acting up, but sure. I can also post that in Slack as well. So these are just resources for you if you want to dive deeper. That said, we've got about 6 minutes until the official end of our time. If there's any additional questions, we can definitely make some space to answer those. So we'll hang out for a few. Jordan, any parting thoughts or comments from you?
No, this has been great as always, Nathan. And I just love the extra time for us to work and then, write in real time, here's some feedback. So thank you all for participating. And it's just great to be back together in the new year. I did want to mention that something we were all talking about in 2024, let me turn on my video, sorry about that. Here I am, is the embeddable form and how great it would be if the embeddable form that you guys have access to was more customizable. Well, Mighty Cause heard us and they made the update already. I wasn't expecting it till the end of Q1. And so the update that you can now see in coloradogives.org related to the embeddable form is that you can create multiple embeddable forms. So that eliminates a lot of the issues around customization that we were feeling a bit of friction about on in 2024. So just wanted to mention that there has been an upgrade, just happened. And so you have more flexibility with those forms. So you can create multiple donation pages. And I think that's really going to help with all your campaigns, and hopefully helps with everything that we're learning here today and through the rest of this Level Up course. Yeah. So thank you all, and I hope that's exciting. If you have more questions, hit me up in Slack, or we can, have a one-on-one call as well.
Well, I'm excited about it because it's going to empower us to do all the things that we're going to talk about over the next few months. And I just to comment on it, as y'all were working, I was going back through all of your comments about just goals and priorities for the year. Couple themes to me that stand out. Yes, there were comments around like just humanization, personal relationships, building those with donors. A couple things on like planned giving, which I can't speak to planned giving, so we'll have to find another resource on planned giving, I'll be honest. But the bigger themes that stand out is really kind of twofold, maybe three. Retention, which we're talking about here in the Welcome series, and acquisition, and a little bit about recurring, which we didn't have that quite in the plans, but I think we can weave some of that in, which will be really fun. But that is our plans for the next few months, is we're going to spend, we obviously spent today talking about new donor welcome series that's related to retention. We're going to finish that up next month. And then the 2 months after that, we're going to spend really focused on acquisition. And so having these multiple embedded form options is going to empower some of the strategies that we're going to use around both email and donor acquisition to make sure we can build some effective strategies. So that is where we're going over the next few months, just to give you a little preview. And those new tools are going to empower you to be able to go install everything that we're going to talk about, which is fantastic. So awesome. Just to call this question out, because Rachel asked it as well, I responded in the chat, but she's wondering, do we need to share today's worksheets with me or Jordan? No. If you want feedback on it, you could go drop it in Slack if you want to and get some thoughts from the community. But you don't have to share those. It's just for your benefit. It's kind of working through some of the ideas and questions. I think that's it. Thank you so much for sticking with us today for an hour and a half, working through all this stuff and putting pen to paper, getting some actual practical things done today, which is really, really fun. Best of luck on your homework. I'll post the details again in Slack. If you got any questions, feel free to shoot me a note there. I try to check every couple of days and make sure I can get you an answer in a timely fashion. So thank you all. Happy New Year again, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Stay warm in the freezing cold out there.